Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. My name is Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. 6 months have passed since the beginning of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. On Wednesday, Ukrainians will celebrate Independence Day. The authorities in Kiev fear that the upcoming celebrations will be an opportunity for the aggressor to carry out further massive attacks. Meanwhile, in the Luhansk region, the Russian occupiers abduct minors to force them or their family members to go to war. According to the Ukrainian media, a show trial over the imprisoned defenders of Azovstal is to take place on August 24th, on the day of Ukraine's independence, in the Russian-controlled Mariupol. Now, there are many reports in the media that the scenery is being prepared in Mariupol for an absolutely disgusting and absurd show trial of Ukrainian defenders, our warriors who are captives of the occupiers. If this vile demonstration practice takes place, the border will be crossed beyond which any negotiations with Russia will be impossible. Russia will be cut off from the negotiations. There will be no more talks. All Ukraine's partners have been informed about what we expect, and we appeal to them for their support in this matter. According to reports from the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, the Russian fleet is destroying military facilities in the Black Sea, Azov, and inland. Meanwhile, according to the findings of the American Institute of War Studies, the Russians, despite further successes in the Bakhmut area, will soon run out of mobilized units to continue their attacks. The enemy fired artillery at Oboda in the Sumy region. Towards Kharkiv, the enemy conducts firing from tanks, barrel and jet artillery. The villages between Izium and Sloviansk were attacked, but the Russian forces were repelled. The enemy continues to attack new positions north of Bakhmut, mainly on the Zaitsev and Bilogorivka estates. Attempts of assault operations west of Donetsk have been reported, but we have repelled hostile attacks. In the direction of Zaporizhia, the occupiers also caused fire damage in residential districts. On the other hand, in the direction of Mykolaiv, the occupiers took over Blahodatne. Today, Ukrainian troops attacked the Antonov Bridge near Kherson again to prevent the Russians from repairing it. The Russians are trying to restore the functioning of this bridge, but such a crossing cannot be repaired with a bucket of concrete. It would require quite a major renovation. That is why we maintain fire control over the Antonovsky Bridge, and from a distance we remind of our presence. For several weeks now in the Luhansk region, Russians forcibly mobilize civilians to fight against Ukrainian troops. Men up to 65 years of age are sent to the front, including minors who used to enjoy the status of a protected professional group, as well as disabled and minors. The inhabitants of Luhansk report repeated cases of disappearance of young people aged 14 to 18. Minors are detained until their identity is established. The verification procedure does not take 72 hours as usual, but until the guardian requests the child. Most often, a father or brother is asked the question, if not a child, who will go to the front instead. On Saturday, the daughter of Alexander Dugin, the Kremlin's chief ideologist, died. The case was commented on by former Russia Duma deputy Ilya Ponomarev. In his opinion, members of the resistance movement involved in the coup are ready to launch further attacks on people associated with Putin. This attack opens a new stage of Russian resistance to Putinism. New, but not the last one. Daria was a faithful companion of Dugin. She called for the extermination of Ukrainians, for violence and murder in the occupied territory. Revenge took place yesterday. The Lord saved Dugin himself, but had prepared a far more terrible punishment for him. This action, like many other direct partisan actions carried out in Russia in recent months, has been carried out by the Republican National Army. We have made contact with its fighters through our team, which is watching the rising tide of resistance in Russia. The National Republican Army is calling on the Russians to join their ranks. President Vladimir Putin has been declared a war criminal by the organization and will be overthrown and destroyed by the organization. It seems to me that there is a kind of chaos growing in Russia, and all sorts of groups probably originating from the civilian and military services, even internally within their own organizations, are starting to fight each other, and perhaps this was a part of one of those wars. An exhibition of damaged Russian military equipment has been organized on the main street of Kiev, which is part of the Ukraine Independence Day celebrations scheduled for Wednesday. The countries of Central Eastern Europe are talking more and more about the introduction of visa sanctions for all Russian citizens in the European Union. The Ukrainian authorities have been calling for this for several weeks. However, Germany has the greatest resistance, as it would like to return to economic relations with Russia from before the war. The Baltic states, such as Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, have taken the most far-reaching steps to limit the movement of Russians, suspended the issuance of almost all types of visas for the Russian citizens. The head of the chancellor of the Prime Minister, Michał Dworczyk, says that the countries that have experienced Russian imperialism in their history are determined to support Ukraine by imposing further sanctions on the Kremlin. However, there are indeed some countries, you mentioned Germany, you can add Italy here, and other countries, which have been running very well-functioning business projects for years. Therefore, they are against the imposition of further sanctions. Only a decisive stance and a decisive action can stop the Russians. Countries such as Finland, Denmark, Sweden, and the Czech Republic want a debate on this topic at the Forum of the European Council. Only unanimous decisions in the European Union will bring results. The Baltic states, despite the imposition of restrictions, are also transit states of the Schengen area, which is why Russians can travel through these states. Warsaw is actively lobbying Western countries to convince them to adopt similar solutions. We have cut the number of visas issued by 80% and are calling for further restrictions on the EU forum, as we believe that this is one way to put pressure on the authorities of the Russian Federation. Several dozen MEPs are calling for concrete decisions to be taken at the next meeting of the heads of diplomacy of the European Union. They want to ban the issuing of tourist visas to Russians and impose sanctions on all 6,000 Putin's allies on Navalny's list. Polish MEPs also signed the appeal. The Polish left wants to sanction other Russian oligarchs, especially their families. For this comfort to end, to not make a fortune from crime in Russia, while your children, your family live comfortably, whether in the EU or in London. The June research conducted in Russia shows that as many as 83% of Russians accept and support the actions of Vladimir Putin. In addition, this support increased by 1% compared to the May survey. The research was carried out by the Levada Research Center, independent of the Kremlin. There is enormous public support for this war, and at the same time, the Russian mob that is there in Ukraine, killing, raping, and murdering. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is not just Putin's war. Narration about the so-called Putin's war is often raised by Germany, especially Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who is opposed to imposing restrictions on movement across Europe for Russian citizens. Blowing all responsibility for the war on Putin is false, explains Professor Waldemar Gontarski. It is like saying that it was not Germany that invaded Poland in 1939, and not the Soviet Union, but Hitler and Stalin. Absurdity, some kind of schizophrenia, lack of the ability to think logically. Gontarski adds that Putin himself did not receive power in the Kremlin. Why did they not take to the streets? Why did they not remove him from the Kremlin? What are we talking about? Another issue is compliance with sanctions by the states of the Union. The wife of Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov had fun in Greece to the sounds of Zorba. She bragged about it on social media. Tightening sanctions for all Russian citizens would require that they would have to get to places like, for example, Peskov's wife, by an even more detoured route than they get now. The idea in sanctions is to make these circumventions as difficult as possible. The introduction of a travel ban for Russians may also have a psychological effect and worsen the current mood of citizens who, due to the Kremlin's propaganda, are not fully aware of Russian crimes against innocent Ukrainian citizens. The September list of reimbursed drugs will include the most expensive drug in the world, Zolgensma, specific for SMA or spinal muscular atrophy. The Minister of Health, Adam Niedzielski, noted that the preparation will be intended for children up to 6 months of age. The source of financing is a medical fund. About 50 children with SMA are born in our country every year. This is the day when we can say that Poland is among the most advanced countries in the world when it comes to a comprehensive solution for patients with SMA. We have screening tests, we have all the drugs that are available on the market and reimbursement, and we have it thanks to, on the one hand, new financial opportunities related to the medical fund created by the president, but we also have it thanks to very difficult and long negotiations that we conducted with the company. All this is available to patients regardless of the high prices that apply to modern drug technologies. Earlier Earlier today, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz met Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at the start of a two-day trip to Canada, during which the two leaders are expected to discuss energy cooperation, while Berlin accelerates its green transition to reduce dependence on Russian gas supplies. Trudeau and Scholz posed for cameras as their meeting kicked off in Montreal. With fears that Russia could completely shut down already heavily reduced gas flows in retaliation for Western sanctions, Scholz has also expressed interest in securing Canadian liquefied natural gas to help replace Russian gas imports. However, they cautioned this would not offer a solution for this winter nor the next, as the infrastructure is not yet in place. While Scholz hopes to deepen economic cooperation with Canada, the war in Ukraine will be among other topics under discussion. On the top of the agenda is an agreement for Canada to supply hydrogen to Germany. The Chancellor will sign the deal with Trudeau in Stephenville, where there are plans to build a plant that will use wind energy to produce the fuel for export. This is Scholz's first official trip to the North American country, along with Economy Minister Robert Habeck and with a large business delegation in tow. Tomorrow, Scholz will deliver a speech at the German-Canadian Economy Conference in Toronto, a gathering focused on energy security, future technologies, and automation. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and some of our other programs. But for me, have a wonderful evening.